It's that time of year again. Everyone's talking about their plans for Thanksgiving, whether it be to complain about having to visit their obnoxious relatives or boasting about all the great food they're going to be stuffing down their gobs in the next few days. Not me, though. I don't have anything against Thanksgiving specifically, mind you. It's the day after that has my stomach in a knot. The day we've come to know as Black Friday. No, I'm not some anti-consumerist or anything like that. See, a few years ago, something happened when I was out shopping, and ever since then, I've found myself increasingly anxious by that one little date on the calendar. Shopping hadn't been my intention that day. In fact, it had been the furthest thing from my mind. I just spent all of Thursday one state over at my sister's place to celebrate with her family. After several hours of nonstop crying from her kids and being crowded by in-laws, I was ready to go home and play hermit for the rest of the long weekend. It wasn't until I drove past a large outlet mall and saw a sign for a cheap flat-screen TV that I decided to stop and take a look. The sad truth is that my own TV was plenty big enough already. I didn't need a new one. I just wanted one because of how cheap it was. Drawn in by the sale, I parked in the busy lot and wandered in through the main doors. As soon as I passed through the threshold, I was dazzled by the brightness of the interior. It was like leaving a dark movie theater in the middle of a winter day, with a field of snow reflecting all of the sun's rays right into my face. It was bad enough that I had to squint for a minute as my eyes adjusted to the brightness. I could hear a simple elevator-like tune playing the same short chorus over and over again, sounding somehow louder with each rotation. As my eyes began to focus, however, the music faded to the background, like a cockroach escaping to a dark corner. I looked around. I was in a mall, no surprise there. I was surrounded by pristine white walls, a flawless marble floor, and lemony odor in the air that reminded me of a newly sterilized operating room. Despite all the cars in the parking lot, the hall was strangely empty, but I could hear the chatter of the crowd in the distance. There were bright neon lights flooding the empty hallway ahead of me, ushering me forward like a landing strip. I started to walk, but as I looked at the storefronts, I noticed most of the shops were still closed. That was odd. It was the middle of the afternoon on Black Friday. If there was ever a time for a store to be open, it was now. Curious, I approached the closest store and pressed my hand against its window, peering into the dark interior. As far as I could tell, it was devoid of both people and merchandise. All I could see were half-melted mannequins standing single file behind a row of empty shelves. Judging by the amount of dust I could see, the store had been closed for quite some time. All of the stores were as empty as this one, so I figured this wing of the mall must have been under construction or something. I headed towards the sound of the crowd. The mall's appearance seemed to deteriorate the closer I got to the sound of the crowd, bringing a credence to my theory that I'd enter through a part of the mall in process of being renovated. They were probably finishing up work on the stores before reopening them. Where the marble floor had once been flawlessly smooth, it was now littered with scuff marks, dents, and pieces of chewing gum. The walls had yellowed and cracks had begun to form along their surface. Everywhere I looked, there were pieces of rubbish. Magazines, plastic shopping bags, wrappers, clothing, cardboard cutouts of cereal mascots, and even what appeared to be a brand new laptop. Among the garbage, I saw a wallet on the floor. Now, I'm not one of those sleazy jerks, so when I picked up the wallet, my intention wasn't to keep it for myself. I genuinely planned on returning it to its owner. However, as I fingered through it, I couldn't find a single piece of ID. Every available slot was filled with different platinum credit cards. No name marked on the front, no signature on the back. I checked the centerfold and found a whopping $3,000 in cash. I had two options: bring it to the Lost and Found office, or abide by the tried-and-true finders keepers rule. I still hadn't decided, even as I stuffed the wallet into my back pocket and gave it a firm slap. I mean, let's face it, if I did hand it over to the Lost and Found, they'd probably take the money themselves, right? I figured I'd hang on to it for now and hopefully come across its owner looking for it. I continued down the empty hallway of blackened storefronts until I came upon Pluto's Depot, a large electronics store with a banner that read, "Black Friday sale, everything must go." Hundreds of shoppers were running through the aisles, grabbing everything they could get their greedy little hands on. They were screaming and clawing at one another, shamelessly stealing items from each other's shopping carts. It was like Black Friday on steroids. Or, well, a regular American Black Friday, really. I stood outside Pluto's depot, wondering if I should turn back. Whatever deals this store had probably weren't worth it, right? I could feel the bulge of the stranger's wallet in my pants. Who's to say its owner wasn't inside? I certainly wasn't drawn in by the 50 to 70% off posters clumsily plastered all over the store's bumpy walls and displays. I, for sure, was not attracted to all of the phenomenally low-priced gizmos and gadgets on the shelves. I definitely didn't have money burning in my pocket, begging to be spent. Not at all. I was being selfless, really. That's what I told myself, at least. As I stepped through the door, I was assaulted with the familiar scent of plastic and upholstery, the famed new car smell. I squeezed through a group of frantic shoppers to get to the shopping cart dock. Unfortunately, it was empty. If I found that flat-screen TV I saw advertised outside the mall, I was going to have to carry it in my arms, and my arms were quickly filling up already. There were so many cool things to buy, and so few things left on the shelves. By the time I made it to the back, every single TV had been taken. All that was left in that section of the store was the latest smartphone. I couldn't remember the make and model, but I remember thinking, isn't this supposed to come out next month? I grabbed it. I doubled back and decided to peruse the store more thoroughly, taking a few more objects as I went along. But, as I walked through the aisles, I kept hearing the faintest groans coming from the posters on the wall. Groans that I ignored. I figured it was my imagination. Maybe I was hearing something from the other aisle. Hell if I know. With nothing else to buy, I parked myself at the back of the checkout line. It was stretched all the way down the aisle and around the corner. I had an armful of stuff weighing me down, but it was worth it for the discount. I had enough gadgets to cover everyone's Christmas gifts, as well as a few things for myself. A mini drone, a fancy remote-controlled car, my new phone, accessories, a laptop case, that kind of stuff. Even with everything carefully balanced between my forearms and chest, I still fought to open the phone so I could admire it. I was about to buy it, after all. Who cared if I opened the box before I paid? It was great. Sleek, skinny, light. I couldn't wait to charge it and start playing with it. I shuffled around impatiently and looked at the line. We hadn't moved. My neck was stiff, my feet were throbbing, and my back was aching. The objects in my arms felt as though they were getting heavier and heavier by the minute. The line was taking forever, and no one seemed to be leaving the store, no matter how much time passed. I was tempted to leave, but I couldn't give up. I wanted the deals. I wanted that phone. I wanted the gizmos and trinkets. I must have stood there for another 10 minutes without moving before I got frustrated and glanced toward the people ahead of me. Why hadn't we moved? Had the cashier fallen asleep? I felt my stomach stop as my eyes scanned the line. The other customers' shoes had melted into the floor, and their hands had merged with their shopping carts. The closer they got to the register, the less the shoppers looked human. Their shape became less and less distinct, blending into the objects they were purchasing and the walls they were leaning against. I let out a scream and I tried to take a step back, but my feet were stuck. I looked down, only to find my shoes had melted into the floor as well. Oh God, it was happening to me. In shock, I dropped the boxes I was holding, sending them falling to the floor. It felt as though an immense weight had been lifted from my shoulders, in the very literal sense. Like that carnival ride that looks like a flying saucer, pinning you against the wall. I hadn't even realized how much pressure my body had been under until the pressure was gone, but it wasn't completely gone. My hand was impossibly heavy. It was the phone. I was still holding the phone. It was planted firmly in the palm of my hand. I could see its slick black casing melting into my flesh. My hand burned. Desperately, I clawed at the phone, trying to pry it from my skin. It wouldn't budge. I remember flapping my arm up and down erratically as though I just caught a spider crawling up my hand. It wouldn't let go. The phone wouldn't let go of me. And then, by pure chance, my hand caught the wall, and the phone shattered into bits and pieces, ripping one of the 70% off posters from the porous surface. I was too busy nursing my hand to notice the wall at first. It was only when I heard a groan that I looked up, to find a tormented face looking back at me. It had completely merged with the wall. Oh God, was the entire store like this? I remember sobbing as I plucked broken pieces of phone from my palm, while never taking my eyes off of the person in the wall. My hand throbbed with pain, but with each chunk I pulled out, it hurt just a little less. Thankfully, when the last piece of plastic dropped to the floor, I was able to move my feet again. I ran out of Pluto's depot without looking back or trying to help anyone inside. I ran through the hallway of cracked walls, stopping only long enough to realize that there were eyes staring at me from within those cracks. I staggered out of the mall and into the empty parking lot. My car was the only one there, off in the distance. I turned around, and instead of seeing a large outlet mall I'd walked into earlier, I found one of many crumbling, abandoned buildings we see nowadays because of the recession. By the time I got home and checked my back pocket, the wallet was gone. That's why I like to stay home at this time of year. Because, honestly, that fake mall is still out there somewhere, and I have no way of telling which door will lead me to it. I'm afraid it'll lure me back in, and I won't have the willpower to resist next time.